They told you only half the story, carefully editing the past so you would never ask too many questions. For generations, whispers about the Idemili gods have circled through villages and cities alike. Half-remembered legends, quickly dismissed superstitions, scattered fragments of a world far older and far more powerful than anyone dares to admit today. But the truth is, what you've heard is a shadow, a watered-down version meant to erase the memory of a divine force that once shaped destinies, demanded loyalty, and ruled the hearts of the Igbo people with sacred, unbreakable laws that even kings feared to question. Have you ever wondered why the python, a creature harmless to man, was so deeply revered that killing it was punishable by death? Or why the very rivers themselves were treated not merely as natural resources, but as living deities with wills of their own, capable of granting fortune or disaster? Why did the arrival of foreign religions make it a priority to demonize certain spirits while tolerating others? And most importantly, what secrets about Idemili's origin and its lingering influence are still being carefully hidden from you today? What alliances, what forbidden rites, what ancient compacts have been buried just beneath the surface of polite conversation and rewritten history? The deeper you dig, the more you realize. The story of Idemili isn't just a tale of gods. It's the story of survival, identity, cosmic order, and a sacred covenant between humans and the divine that has refused to be broken, no matter how many centuries have passed. Today, we are opening the forbidden scrolls and brushing away the dust of time. We are walking into shrines long abandoned and diving beneath river waters, still said to whisper secrets to those willing to listen. From the fierce reverence commanded by Idemili to the deeply symbolic rituals that defined generations, from the sacred guardianship of the python to the spiritual laws that maintained cosmic balance, you are about to witness the full story. No summaries, no polite omissions. Every secret, every law, every hidden truth will be revealed. Not a minute will be skipped. This is not just another folklore tale for entertainment. It is a journey into the soul of a people, a living testament to a spiritual legacy that refused extinction. It is the unveiling of the gods that tried to make you forget, the divine forces that even now wait patiently in the corners of modernity, unchanged, undefeated, and still very much alive. Brace yourself. Everything you thought you knew about the Idemili gods is about to be rewritten. Long before the borders of Igbo land were drawn on any map, before colonial flags ever touched the soil, there existed an ancient reverence so profound that it's carved itself into the very rivers and earth of the people. The story of Idemili begins not as a myth, but as a living force, a goddess, born from the divine marriage of the heavens and waters, the sacred child of Eke, the mighty creative force that gave form to the world. In those ancient times, the people did not separate themselves from nature. They lived within it as part of a grand cosmic balance, and among all the divine manifestations, it was Idemili who held the secret keys to order, prosperity, and spiritual protection. Idemili was not merely a spirit of water, she was the water, flowing endlessly through the rivers, veins of life through the land. She embodied purity, justice, and the sustaining force that allowed crops to grow and communities to thrive. Her presence was most strongly felt in the great Idemili River, a body of water said to sing to those pure of heart and curse those who defied her sacred laws. Through this river, the energy pulsated, feeding the land with unseen hands, nurturing the people who built their homes near its banks. The earliest worshippers of Idemili were not priests in grand temples, but farmers, hunters, women drawing water, children splashing in the shallows, all of them instinctively aware that they were under the gaze of a living spirit who demanded both respect and loyalty. As the centuries turned, Idemili's worship evolved from instinctive reverence into structured devotion. Shrines were erected, sacred groves were protected, and the python, Idemili, rose as an earthly messenger and living symbol. Killing a python was not simply an act of violence. It was a grave offense against the goddess herself, a cosmic disruption that demanded elaborate atonement to avoid catastrophe. The priests and priestesses of Idemili, selected through dreams, visions, and divine signs, became the custodians of her mysteries, wielding knowledge that could summon rain, heal sickness, or invoke ruin on those who dare to disrespect the divine order. Every element of her story is drenched in both power and intimacy. She was not a distant god sitting high above. She was in the water that quenched your thirst, the mist that cooled your skin, the python that slid silently through the undergrowth, always watching. Tales say that those chosen by Idemili would find themselves compelled to act, to build shrines, to dedicate their lives in service without understanding why, only feeling the irresistible pull of destiny guiding their every move. The origins of Idemili reveal a goddess who is at once tender and terrifying, nurturing and unyielding. She demanded loyalty but offered boundless blessings in return. Prosperity, fertility, protection in war, wisdom in leadership, all these gifts flowed from a river. Yet any betrayal, any breach of the sacred laws was met with swift and sometimes devastating consequences. In this delicate dance between reverence and fear, the people of Igbo land found not just religion, but a way of life, one where every act was performed under the silent, watchful gaze of an ancient, undying spirit. The powers of Idemili stretch far beyond mortal understanding. To the uninitiated, she is merely a goddess tied to a river. But to those who know, she is the custodian of balance, the weaver of destinies, and the unshakable guardian of truth. A most visible and sacred symbol is the python, Idemili, a creature so deeply intertwined with her spirit that harming it was equivalent to waging war against the goddess herself. The python was seen as a bridge between the seen and unseen worlds, a silent messenger carrying prayers to the depths of sacred waters and returning with blessings or judgment. The river that bears her name is not just a physical place but a portal, an energetic vein running through the spiritual and earthly realms. Fishermen who prayed at the river banks before casting their nets knew they were not simply addressing nature. They were entreating a conscious entity that could grant abundance or curse them with barren nets. Women would often offer the first water they drew at dawn to Idemili before even tasting it themselves, recognizing that the gift of clean water was a daily blessing, not a right. Every current, every ripple, every mist rising from the water carried whispers of her presence, unseen but deeply felt. Her power is intricately tied to justice and truth. In times long past, disputes that could not be settled by human wisdom were brought before Idemili. Sacred oaths were sworn by a river, and lying under such an oath was believed to bring about certain death, madness, or misfortune. It was known that Idemili hated falsehood above all things. Truth, to her, was not simply a virtue. It was the law of the cosmos itself, and those who disrupted this law invited destruction, not only upon themselves but sometimes upon entire communities. Symbols of Idemili were woven into every part of Igbo life. the traditional staff, or ofo, which symbolizes truth and justice among the Igbo, is spiritually connected to her laws. The 7 coils, often depicted in shrines, symbolize the 7 layers of existence she governs. Each coil, a realm, she weaves together with careful, unseen threads. Those who served her understood that her blessings were not given lightly. They were earned through a life of sincerity, humility, and alignment with the natural order she fiercely maintained. Even today, echoes of Idemili's symbolism remain embedded in Igbo consciousness. The respect for rivers, the unspoken fear of breaking taboos, the deep cultural obsession with truthfulness and oath-taking. These are not accidents of culture. They are the living fingerprints of a goddess who once walked with her people, shaping their laws, their honor, and their very understanding of existence. Her symbols are not relics of a forgotten past. They are active forces, quietly shaping the rhythm of life, invisible yet omnipresent, waiting for those who still dare to see. Beyond the visible shrines and public reverence lay a hidden world, a domain of sacred rituals and forbidden knowledge known only to the initiated. The worship of Idemili was not merely a matter of outward devotion. It was a layered journey into mysteries that only the chosen could navigate. Ordinary men and women could approach the river, pray, and offer sacrifices, but the deeper ceremonies, the ones that called forth the true presence of Idemili, were guarded with fierce secrecy. To be initiated into the inner circle of Idemili's worship was not a matter of ambition. It was a calling, marked by omens, visions, or extraordinary encounters with the sacred python. Those chosen were subjected to rigorous spiritual tests, guided through ancient rites that stripped them of their former selves. They would spend days, sometimes weeks, isolated near the river, fasting, bathing, and meditating, until they could hear the voice of the goddess in the rustling of the trees and the whisper of the currents. At the end of this ordeal, if deemed worthy, they were brought into the sacred groves hidden deep within the forests, places where human feet rarely tread, where the veil between worlds was so thin that reality itself seemed to shimmer. Here, in the hush of ancient trees and under the watching eyes of ancestral spirits, secret rituals unfolded. Offerings of kola nuts, palm wine, yam, and blood from symbolic animal sacrifices were made, not to please a bloodthirsty deity, but to affirm the sacred bonds between humans and the divine forces that governed existence. Chanting filled the air, language older than memory, syllables heavy with power, invoking the full attention of Idemili. It was in these moments that priests and priestesses received sacred symbols, intricate signs woven into their skin through rituals of anointing and incantation, binding them to the goddess forever. The forbidden knowledge passed from mouth to ear within these circles was never written down. It spoke of the rivers that could heal any disease, the sacred herbs known only to Idemili's servants, the signs in the stars that foretold disaster, and the invocations that could shift the tides of fate itself. There were towers of sacred pools that opened gateways to the spirit world during certain moons, rituals that could call upon the ancestors for guidance, and secrets so potent that even hearing them without initiation could drive an unprepared mind into madness. Among the most closely guarded secrets was the knowledge of cosmic balance. Idemili's priests were not just spiritual leaders, they were cosmic custodians, tasked with maintaining harmony between the visible world and the invisible realms. They intervened when a delicate balance was threatened, using rituals not of violence, but of intricate symbolic actions, placing specific stones, planting sacred trees, offering silent prayers under certain constellation. Every act was a dialogue with forces older than humanity itself. Even within the initiated circles, there were degrees of knowledge. A newly inducted priest knew only fragments of the truth. Only the high priests and priestesses, those who had spent lifetimes in service, could approach the final mysteries, the great truths of existence that, once understood, left a person forever changed. It was said that these few could walk into the river and disappear without a ripple, crossing into the spirit world without dying, becoming one with Idemili's eternal current. To speak openly of these rituals was forbidden. To betray the sacred knowledge was to invite not just earthly punishment, but spiritual annihilation. Thus, the secrets of Idemili have survived not because they were shouted from rooftops, but because they were whispered with reverence, carried like hidden flames through generations, never extinguished, only waiting for those brave enough to seek them. The arrival of the foreign ships brought with them more than strange goods and new languages. They carried a storm that would seek to erase centuries of belief, centuries of connection to the spirits of the land and water. At first, the villagers watched with cautious curiosity as white-skinned men and their black-skinned converts spoke of a single god who demanded exclusive worship. They offered strange, glittering gifts, mirrors, cloth, beads, but in exchange they demanded something far greater: the abandonment of the old gods, of Idemili. The conflict was not instant. For a time, the ancient and the new existed side by side. There were those who baptized the children by day and crept into the groves by night, leaving offerings at Idemili shrines, hedging their bets between two spiritual worlds. But the colonial authorities, armed with their Bibles and bayonets, were not content with coexistence. To them, the worship of Idemili and her river spirits was not just ignorance, it was rebellion against the new order they sought to impose. Missionaries launched campaigns to demonize the indigenous gods. The python, once a sacred symbol of cosmic balance, was declared a demon, a devil's servant. Rivers, once revered, were deemed cursed waters, needing purification. Children were taught to fear the old ways, to see the shrines as places of darkness rather than light. Sacred groves were cut down, shrines were burned, priests were humiliated and forced to convert, or face exile, sometimes death. Colonial administrators backed these efforts with law, branding traditional practices as crimes punishable by imprisonment. Yet Idemili was not so easily erased. Even as public worship was driven underground, the spirit of the goddess lingered. Some villagers refused to kill pythons, even when threatened with punishment. Others preserved sacred rites in secret, passing knowledge quietly from elder to child, hidden beneath the surface of Christian prayers. Festivals once dedicated openly to Idemili were disguised as secular harvest celebrations. The true meaning, known only to those who kept the old fire alive in their hearts. The most devastating loss was the fracturing of belief, where once unity under the gods had bound communities together with invisible cords of shared meaning, now suspicion and division festered. Some saw those who clung to the old ways as stubborn relics, while others saw the converts as traitors to their ancestors. Families split, traditions weakened, and the great river herself seemed to mourn, her waters running heavy with the sorrow of a people torn from their roots. but the spirit of Idemili could not be drowned by foreign waters. Beneath the surface of modernity, beyond the reach of colonial law and missionary zeal, she continued to flow, in whispered stories, in secret odes, sworn by riverbanks, in the unseen rituals that persisted in the hearts of those who remembered. The goddess endured. She became not a relic of the past, but a silent challenger to those who believed that everything ancient could be forgotten. In every heartbeat of the river, in every python that slithers, unseen through the underbrush, the defiance of Idemili lives on. A testament that while temples may burn and laws may change, true power, born from the land itself, cannot be so easily conquered. Today, when you walk along the riverbanks of Igbo land, it may seem like nothing stirs beyond the rush of water and the rustle of trees. But if you listen closely, if you allow the noise of the modern world to fall away, you might hear it, the soft whisper of an ancient presence still watching, still waiting. Idemili has never truly left. Her shrines may have crumbled, her pythons may now hide in deeper forests, her worship may have been forced into silence, but her spirit remains stitched into the soul of the land itself. The story of Idemili is not just a story of a goddess. It is a story of a people who refuse to forget, even when forgetting was a safer choice. It is the story of rivers that flow with memory, of sacred laws that still govern unseen realms, of a cosmic balance that no colonizer could fully erase. Every truth hidden, every ritual silenced, every shrine desecrated, only strengthened the determination of those who remembered her. Idemili became more than a deity. She became a living memory, carried in the blood, in the songs, in the whispered prayers spoken when no one else is listening. Mysteries remain. Not all has been told. Some secrets are still protected by those few who know the ancient signs, who keep the old fires burning deep within them. There are sacred groves that refuse to die, places where the old rituals still flicker in hidden ceremonies. There are still those who, before making life-altering decisions, slip away to the river's edge and pour their hopes into the water, trusting that the spirit of Idemili will hear them and guide their steps. The gods may have been pushed into the shadows, but in truth, they have only learned to walk quietly. Idemili, the goddess of the river, the guardian of truth and cosmic balance, is still here, silent, patient, powerful. Her presence humbles the arrogance of time and whispers that not all can be rewritten, not all can be erased. In every flowing river, in every sudden twist of fate, she reminds those who dare to remember. The old gods are never truly gone. They are simply waiting for the right hearts to awaken. If this story stirred something ancient inside you, if you felt the pulse of memory deep within your spirit, don't let it fade. Honor it, nurture it. And if you believe that stories like this deserve to live on, like and subscribe to the channel and share this journey with someone who needs to remember where we truly come from.